With the much anticipated truce between Israel and Hamas just around the corner, we take a deeper dive into the deal. Retired British Army Colonel Richard Kemp, who served from 1977 to 2006, provides a rare insider perspective on the hostage deal brokered between Israel and Hamas. Colonel Richard Kemp, thank you so much for joining us.
My pleasure to be with you.
Colonel, you're actually in Israel right now. Given this recent Israel-Hamas hostage deal, how do you read it? Is it a win for either side?
It's certainly a win for Israel in terms of getting back at least some of the hostages that were dragged off on the 7th of October, which is very important for Israel as a country and all people. It's a win also for Hamas because Hamas is under great pressure. They've been subjected to an enormous battering by Israel over the last few weeks. They're reeling, they're on the back foot. And this deal suggests it's not because they're some kind of humanitarian organization that takes pity on their captives. It suggests they're in a desperate state and want to have some breathing space, which they, I think, hope will eventually lead to a permanent ceasefire.
On that note, Israel has vowed to, quote, continue its complete annihilation of Hamas after this ceasefire. What will this 4-day ceasefire do from a tactical perspective?
Well, I think from the Hamas perspective, it gives them a chance to regroup, reorganize, plan defensive operations against the IDF, and in some cases for their leaders, I think probably to try and escape out of Gaza to live and fight another day. For Israel, it doesn't give them any huge advantage, probably the opposite, in fact, because they begin to lose military momentum over the 4-day period. They can, of course, themselves reposition, prepare to resume the offensive in an even more furious way, I think, if it's possible. And they can operate some kind of surveillance on the enemy to see what they're doing, where they're going to, etc., although there are constraints on that under the deal that's been agreed.
Now, there have been mixed reviews to this hostage deal. Former U.S. official John Bolton is saying negotiating with terrorists never works. What do you see as the geopolitical impact of this deal?
Well, I think it's got a few implications, one of which is I think it to an extent undermines Israeli support among Arab states, because the Arabs, what they want two things. They want Hamas to be destroyed. I'm talking about countries like Egypt, Jordan, Saudi Arabia, the UAE, which is also, all of those countries are indirectly threatened by Hamas, so they want Israel to destroy them. And secondly, they want a strong Israel. They want an Israel that's seen to be able to defend itself, stand up for itself, deter its enemies, and also help in the protection of their own countries against the common threat, which is Iran. And I think it may appear to some of these Arab countries as a bit of a sign of Israeli weakness, the fact that they're willing to pause their operations. I think the most important thing will be for Israel will be to resume operations as rapidly as possible and not allow themselves to be dragged into a protracted period of ceasefire, which I think there'll be a lot of pressure on them to do.
Now, there have been some reports that say doing this type of a deal makes Hamas almost legitimate, that you are negotiating with them. How much do you see international pressure, especially all of these global protests that are pro-Palestine, playing into this deal?
Well, I think it's absolutely the correct perspective. There are a lot of people in the Western world, in particular in Europe, in the United States, in Britain, who are sympathetic towards Hamas. I think they were really horrified by what they saw in most cases on the 7th of October, although many people will say Israel had it coming, which of course is a horrific thing to imagine, but nevertheless that's what some people think. And there is sympathy for Hamas, and I think them being seen to be reasonable people, reasonable actors who are willing to release some of the hostages, I think that reinforces those people who are sympathetic. And I think if anything, this is going to lead to probably even greater protests around the West in favor of Hamas against Israel, because they will be given a kind of I think, an incentive to be pushing hard for a longer ceasefire.